Good morning, everyone. I'm Joanna Sinclair, or call me Jo. I'm not an inventor. Actually, my slides aren't quite working the same way. That way. But I've been thinking about great Australian inventions. According to Google and other things, this includes things like they were supposed to come up one at a time. But it includes things like the boomerang, Vegemite, notebooks. Did you know notebooks were invented by a Tasmanian? Like sticking pieces of paper together and giving it a cover and gluing it together? Fantastic invention. Cochlear implants, electronic pacemakers, the black box flight recorder was invented by an Australian, the electric drill, Google Maps, apparently, ultrasound scanners, race cam, inflatable escape slides, the old wine cask, polymer banknotes, cervical cancer vaccines, amazing inventions. But my personal favourite hasn't actually made this list of top Australian inventions, and this one actually came to me from a librarian in the United States. Does anyone have any ideas of what about this great Australian invention might be? The Hills hoist? That's an excellent guess, but I had another thing in mind. Yes? A library system? Possibly. Like the one that this particular lady's told me about. Oh, Karen, yes. The Dewey Decimal, that wasn't the one I'm thinking of, but I might have to look that up. That's an amazing system. No, what this librarian told me about was the big book. Is anyone familiar with big books? So the big books are used by educators and storytellers across the world. This is Don Holdaway, who was the inventor of the big book. And these are just big, oversized books that featured in story time sessions that I used to go to with my mum and my sisters at the library when I was very small. I think it was those first experiences, dressed in my pyjamas, sitting on the floor of the library, looking up at these big books, that instilled in me a love of reading. And it also introduced to me the power of story and how it can be used to transport you to another place, and also how story can shape and influence your thinking. So today I'm actually going to talk to you about how story has shaped my own story and identity, and how it continues to shape and change me. I've just got a few pictures to show you as we go along. So there have been many times in my life where brief encounters with strangers at key moments have shifted my story and my way of being in the world. I trained as a chemical engineer, and my first job as a graduate was in Gladstone, Queensland. It was a very exciting time of life, living away from home in a new town and discovering what work as an engineer actually looks like. I worked in an explosives manufacturing facility, but I found that my joy in work related more to having conversations with the operators and the truck drivers about their lives than improving the efficiency of or upgrading the manufacturing plant. I joined a local church community and through a lovely flatmate there, and one random Sunday I had a conversation with a lady about volunteer opportunities for young people with Australian Volunteers International. I actually never saw that woman again. She was possibly a visitor passing through, but that conversation with that woman sparked a desire to see something different in the world. It led me to travelling to Papua New Guinea with a group of young people, and we lived together in villages on the Kokoda Trail for a couple of months. I met this man. He was a fuzzy wuzzy angel who kindly shared his stories and reflections on the Second World War, and I learnt about daily life in a completely different world to my own. This time in Papua New Guinea was a turning point for me. It was my first exposure to community development and what community development could be, and also probably what it shouldn't be. And it was the first seed that was planted in a journey towards exploring a different type of work and being in the world for me. I continued to work as an engineer for many years, and I gradually increased my involvement in community work, But after marrying the lovely Duncan, there he is, and having our first child, we decided to follow a work opportunity for Duncan in Philadelphia in the United States. We went to the US full of hope, excited about the opportunity for stimulating research for Duncan and opportunities that can only come when you immerse yourself in a different culture. It was a rewarding 3.5 years, but it had a very rocky start. We had issues with our visas on the way, and we found setting up the most basic structures in our life was really difficult. It was humbling to experience what it was like to be an alien in a foreign country. And that's what you're called, actually, in the US. You are aliens. We struggled to open bank accounts, to find rental leases when our Australian credit history meant nothing. To add to these pressures, a week after we arrived, I had a miscarriage, and I had to quickly learn how to navigate the medical system without family or friends around. Whew, I didn't think I'd get emotional. At this time of uncertainty and new beginnings, we were blessed by strangers who chose to show us hospitality and love. I had been involved in something called BSF, the Bible Study Fellowship in Australia, before we left, and I sought out a local chapter in Philadelphia. It was not very close to home. We didn't own a car, and so I had to travel by bus and train with a small child. But not long after joining, an anonymous member of the group started to provide money to cover the cost of our travel. And as we worked our way through Genesis that year, God's promise to Isaac spoke directly to me. Sorry, this is all coming back. So God said to Isaac, "Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you, and I will bless you." Whew. Sorry, this is an example of what it's like to be triggered, and I wasn't expecting this. Whew. And bless us he did, with a second beautiful daughter and a community of people who supported us as parents and strangers. As a recipient of many meals from mothers' groups, parents who I'd barely met, I continue to take great delight in preparing meals for any new parent out there who I encounter, whether they want the meal or not. This is a picture actually of one of the lovely families that we got to know particularly well. They invited us quite literally to their Thanksgiving meal the first time that we were in the US. And Matilda's first food after when she was weaning was actually turkey and roast potato. So she knows exactly what it means to be part of a Thanksgiving feast. Whew. So there have been many times in my life where it's been the power of story itself that has shifted my life trajectory. And Jesus knew the power of story very well. When people came to him to ask him about the kingdom, he would respond with stories in the form of parables. Stories about people and work and contexts that they were familiar with and made sense to them. Stories that connected them to God and showed them that our God is not a faraway God. We have a God who wants to be in relationship with us. So when our family moved to Tasmania 8 years ago, we were keen to start a new chapter in our life. I was interested in exploring options for work in community development, but was unsure where to begin. Through a local running group, I met a lovely lady called Mary, who you may know from Fostering Hope. I'd never heard of a human library before, but decided to sign up as a librarian. The library uses the art of storytelling to break down barriers and to build empathy. The books are Tasmanian people who have experienced stereotyping, prejudice and discrimination. I saw firsthand how powerful it can be to look someone in the eye as they tell you their own story. I saw firsthand how powerful it can be to look... It's difficult to place someone in a box when you know their name and they invite you to sit with them for a moment as they share part of their experience of life with you. I also saw how life-giving it is for the books to tell their story repeatedly and to refine and craft these stories in a way that builds their confidence and actually builds hope for a different future or a new story. My experience with the Hobart Human Library led me to taking further studies in social work, where I've been challenged to take these reflections even further. In a very secular environment, I've been encouraged to reflect deeply on my core values and my identity. And this has actually created more opportunities to talk about my faith than I ever expected, particularly when the universities are often very secular environments. In my final presentation to my supervisor, I created a series of heart motifs as a reflection of the type of social worker I plan to be. And a little excerpt from this. The rock, one of those little hearts is a rock, or a stone heart represents my core, my Christian faith, my life partner, and my early work as an engineer. My faith provides the direction for how I am to live in this world. I believe that we are called to act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly. My cultural background as a privileged, white, middle-class woman who grew up in the Catholic tradition informs what it means to love, to be patient, to be kind, to persevere, to seek the truth, to not always follow the rules, but to follow the heart. My faith community, and I mean you, continue to encourage me to wrestle with the big questions about life and purpose. But a curiosity for understanding how the world works that led me to my early love of science and maths and paid engineering still sets me in a good place. With time, I found that my curiosity has drawn me to wanting to know what makes people tick, maybe rather than chemical processes. Having started life as a problem solver of technical problems, I have learnt how to apply a more sociological lens to social problems. Social workers talk about the importance of lived experience when understanding the needs and situations of those they work with. And I've seen this firsthand during my placements as I've listened to people with anxiety describe what life actually looks like when you have a mental illness. I've been challenged to turn the mirror on my own story as I've listened to first responders describe the physical impact of stress on their body as a manifestation of their poor brain health. And I'm constantly surprised and delighted by the opportunities I see to celebrate our uniqueness and our value, but also how interconnected we are as part of God's creation. And one of the most satisfying ways that I'm currently able to see Jesus changing me and the people around me while gently developing my skills as a future social worker has been working as a volunteer airport chaplain. I've been reading reflections from an airport chaplain at Heathrow Airport, and I like how he describes the essence of presence. Does anyone know what an airport chaplain is? Or have they come across one? If you find yourself in an airport at some stage, you might see these people wandering around in a high-vis vest and yes. So as a chaplain in this space, our role can seem quite undefined, and I never know on any given day who I might meet or why I've been placed there. This particular chaplain from Heathrow says it's simply a case of being in the right place at the right time, maybe kind of loitering with intent or walking with an interruptible plod. I kind of like that. But I believe it is a gift and a privilege to be able to walk into a space with no agenda, merely praying to God as I step into that space that he will place in front of me whoever I need to spend time with that day. That might be the airport reception staff member, it could be a car rental employee, an agitated passenger, or a weary cleaner. I know that in many cases there is nothing that I can do except sit and listen and to be a witness to whatever someone might be going through on that particular day. In this space, I've sat with a distraught father on Christmas Eve as he prepared to board a plane with a backpack full of Christmas presents. His partner had recently left the state with their children, no notice, and he was unsure if he was actually going to see his children. I've had a series of conversations with a young barista who's been living in Hobart with his family overseas, far from home, and talking to him about how he balances life and work and looking after his mental health. I have sat for hours with an exhausted grandmother, bewildered by her inability to connect with her grandchild, estranged from her daughter, trying to work out how to rebook a flight that she'd just missed, and brace herself for returning to her role as carer for her ageing mother. We sat, we shared some food, and she talked before she left to spend an evening in a hotel nearby before she took on whatever happened the next day. As someone who started their working career as a problem solver and a doer and a Martha-like woman of action, I have learnt to surrender the desire to do, to fix, to solve, even to help. Help is a loaded word. I am learning to follow the example of Mary, to sit and to listen and to just be. And I have to say right now, at the end of my first week of my new job, it is really difficult not to want to do stuff. I just have to sit. We have a God who is intricately interested in being present with his creation, to the extent that he actually came to live amongst us, to experience deeply what it was to be one of us. I would encourage you today to allow yourself to be changed by connecting with the people God has placed in front of you. Be curious to hear another person's story and maybe be prepared to be changed. And just a small disclaimer, that lovely gentleman, the father of the big books, I did a bit of fact checking, and I think technically he was born in New Zealand, but apparently later became a resident of Australia, so we'll claim him as our own. Thank you very much.